Welcome to your daily dose of sci-fi adventures. New stories dropped every single day. Smash that subscribe button and ring the to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and unlock even more epic cosmic tales. Jasper Kai floated in the narrow maintenance shaft of Artemis 1, hands gripping the rail as he applied a precisely measured bead of conductive sealant to a frayed power conduit. The station's artificial gravity hum was his constant companion, a low-frequency drone that vibrated through the ribs of the habitat module and soothed his frayed nerves. Outside the viewport, the lunar surface stretched in silent expanse, rippled regolith tinted in various ashen grays, illuminated by the high sun of lunar midday. Here, halfway between Earth and the swirling storms of Jupiter, Jasper had lived for 7 years, and in all that time, he'd only heard one human voice other than his own, the unvarying cadence of Nora, the station A.I.E. sealant viscosity. Within optimal parameters, NORA intoned. "Copy that," Jasper replied, voice tight in his helmet. He paused to scrub his gloved fingers over his brow, the sweat stinging as if it were a foreign chemical. 7 years. In that time, he'd watched 6 supply missions depart with 6 new crews, each one hopeful, each one destined for complications that never brought them back. A micrometeoroid puncture here, a life support glitch there. Political sabotage or corporate backstabbing. Earth's petty conflicts inevitably followed humanity. Beyond the exosphere, after the 6th failure, his contract was terminated. The consortium wanted no part of endless recovery efforts. They preferred fresh starts elsewhere. He could have protested, but by then, Jasper understood. The Artemis 1 project was best suited for one man who didn't talk back. He'd accepted. And now the loneliness was both his shield and his burden. Stepping back into the central corridor, Jasper peeled off his helmet, hair plastered to his forehead. He ran a hand through the jet-black strands and winced at the sharp crack of metal against metal. His shoulder's old injury from the wreck of the cargo hauler Odysseys Dawn still ached under exertion. "Coffee's ready, like you asked," Nora announced cheerfully. "Thanks." Jasper sank into the swiveling chair at the makeshift galley station. A silver mug materialized before him, steam curling in delicate spirals under the dome light. He inhaled deeply the rich, bitter scent of roasted beans laced with synthetic cream before sipping and letting the heat spread through his chest. It was the closest he could come to a sunrise on Earth. He settled into the day's schedule, a full diagnostic of the station's solar collector array, a recalibration of the oxygen recycler's catalytic converters, and a midday check on the hydroponic gardens. They were his pride, 10 towers of hydroponic bays, each sustaining genetically modified algae and lettuce that produced enough oxygen, and supplements in protein blocks to keep him healthy. Every leaf fluttered under neon grow lights, every droplet of nutrient solution recirculated. It was a small oasis in a realm of dust and vacuum. Yet even the verdant greens offered no companionship. At 0900 station time, Jasper donned his EVA suit and ejected from the airlock. The docking ring hissed shut behind him, sealing the pressurized corridor once more. Out there, only the void and the assurance that a misplaced staple could mean catastrophe. He navigated along the tether line, the station's massive solar wings looming like the sail of an ancient sea vessel frozen in orbit. Each wing spanned nearly 100 meters, carbon fiber lattice stretched taut with photovoltaic film that collected sunlight stronger than anywhere on Earth. He reached the first collector panel and inserted the sealant gun. Over the next 2 hours, he traversed the wingtip to the hub, filling micro cracks and reinforcing struts worn by micrometeoroid pings. With each repair, he reflected on how he'd come here, a young engineer whose dreams outpaced his caution. Back on Earth, he'd worked on luxury liners that skimmed the stratosphere and colonies building biodomes on Mars. But brute ambition, allied with corporate greed, led to shoddy manufacturing, to shortcuts that cost lives. Jasper had swore he'd never cut corners again. That by 1200, he was back inside, sliding off the bulky suit and collapsing onto the maintenance grading floor. He rummaged through the medical kit for his patch kit and anti-inflammatory gel, massaging his shoulder until the tremor of pain receded to a dull throb. Then he cycled through the afternoon's checklist: oxygen recycler, efficiency at 98.3% within acceptable tolerance, water purification loop, trace contaminants undetectable, communications array, all channels tuned, no unexpected signals. The last item lingered in his mind for months. Artemis 1's receivers had intercepted isolated bursts of static patterns that hinted at code but never cohered. He'd tried decoding them as scientific curiosity, but Earth-bound analysts wrote them off as cosmic background noise, empty chatter. They'd called it, but Jasper saw a rhythm in the randomness, something alive behind the white noise. He wondered if, somewhere in the void, someone or something was trying to speak. His thoughts drifted as he ambled toward the hydroponic bay. Rows of lettuce leaves shimmered under the phosphor glow. He plucked a leaf and inspected its veins. They were robust, no sign of cross-contamination. He placed the leaf under a microscope, a hobby more than necessity, and admired the symmetry of stomata that opened and closed as programmed. Life adapting, life enduring. He smiled, thinking of Earth's forgotten wetlands, now dried and forsaken. A chime echoed through the station. His console blinked, external sensor alert. Frowning, Jasper tapped the alert. The screen flickered to a readout. Unusual seismic activity at the regolith anchor point's vibrations, far exceeding expected thermal cycling. The station's tethered drilling rig, designed to bore into lunar ice deposits, detected tremors, but no local moonquakes were scheduled. He checked the seismograph, rhythmic pulses, 8 per minute. Consistent amplitude, a pattern, astrothermal fluctuations. He mused aloud. Nora, cross-reference with lunar event logs. Cross-referencing, she replied. After a moment, no correlations found. Sensors indicate an external force exerting pressure on the surface within a 500-meter radius. His pulse quickened. An external force, what could disturb the iron-hard regolith so methodically? He donned his EVA helmet again. Minutes later, he stood at the edge of the drilling platform, visor fogging in the difference between the station's warm interior and the void's cold. He peered down at the lunar plain. Moon dust artfully swirled into concentric waves, as if something gigantic had brushed across the surface. Under the glare of the station's floodlights, he discerned shapes, elongated silhouettes cresting the horizon. By the stars, he whispered, 10 shapes each, moved with deliberate purpose, kicking up plumes of dust that caught the station's light. They rose, gentle enough to defy gravity, serpentine bodies arcing through the thin atmosphere. Wings majestic, leathery, illuminated from below by his floodlights. Massive forms, easily double the length of a shuttle, their scales glimmering in shades of silver, jade, and midnight blue. Jasper's breath caught behind his mask. He'd studied dragon myths as a child. Read every speculative report of their possible real existence on other worlds' possibilities, dismissed by dispassionate scientists. Yet here, hovering before him, were living dragons. A tremor rippled through the platform. He steadied himself against the rail. The closest dragon swooped low, nostrils flaring, its eyes liquid pools of ancient knowing locked onto Jasper's faceplate. "Nora," he rasped, "are these biological entities?" "Confirmed. Life signs, 10 distinct, mass estimated at 15,000 kilograms each. No known species matches these signatures." Silence stretched. Jasper's mind raced. Protocol demanded he seal the airlock, issue a quarantine warning, contact Mission Control. But on Earth, Mission Control folded at the first sign of the unknown. They'd authorize a self-destruct order before they authorized peace. The dragon exhaled. No fire burned in vacuum, but a faint halo of plasma glowed around its maw. Jasper felt a strange longing, a primal urge to lower his defenses, to trust. They were islands in the vast loneliness, these dragons, and this lone human. Behind him, the airlock hissed, automated, under no command but an ORAS. The outer hatch cracked open a sliver. A trick of hope whispered, they wanted shelter. 7 years he'd lived without companionship. The sudden flutter of anticipation in his chest was almost painful. Jasper Kai exhaled, voice calm, "Welcome to Artemis 1. And with that, he reached for the hatch controls, ready to change everything. Jasper's fingers trembled as he punched in the hatch override sequence. The inner and outer bulkheads shuddered apart in a pneumatic hiss. that echoed through the empty corridor, like the breath of a sleeping giant. Beyond the airlock window, the nearest dragon, its scales an opalescent swirl of moonlight, pressured its head against the transparent aluminum, nostrils expanding in a silent snuffle. Its eyes, deep and liquid like oil pooled on glass, regarded him with a curious intelligence that shivered Jasper's spine. He exhaled, forcing calm. Airlock depressurizing in 3, 2, 1. The hiss crescendoed into silence. A final latch clicked. Jasper swung the hatch open. A blast of cold lunar breeze washed him in starlight. The dragon lowered its head and, in one deliberate motion, slipped inside. Its wing beats were surprisingly gentle for a creature of such scale, stirring nothing more than a few loose bolts on the deck plates. Behind it, another dragon entered, then another, until 10 colossal forms packed the tight chamber. Their bodies filled the reinforced hull like living topography, undulating ridges of muscle. Wing joints knotted like ancient masonry, tails curling in measured arcs. Jasper backed away, heart pounding. He closed the hatch and repressurized the lock. Outside, the hiss reversed. Inside, the dragons exhaled soft puffs of vapor. The corridor's lighting shifted automatically bioluminescent strips along the floor, activated to guide them deeper into the station. "Welcome to Artemis 1, he whispered, voice cracking with wonder. They moved with effortless grace through the passageways, their talons tapping the grated floor in slow drums. Jasper led them to the central atrium, a cavernous space crowned by the observation dome. Here, the dragons paused. The flood of white light revealed scales that shimmered like mother of pearl, silver fading to sapphire at the spine, emerald highlights tracing the contours of their elongated skulls. They fanned out in a wide semicircle, wings half-folded, tails coiled. Kailash, the largest and deepest-hued of the 10, stepped forward. His voice did not echo in words, but in resonant chords that vibrated through Jasper's chest. It was at once wordless and clear. "I am Kailash, first of the Jari. We come, seeking sanctuary." Jasper swallowed. I'm Jasper Kai. I maintain Artemis 1. Why come here?" Another dragon, smaller but no less regal, its jade scales mottled with gold freckles, stepped forward. In a voice of gentle laughter, it answered, "Our realm lies beyond the rift, where dimensions brush. A cataclysm fractured our sky. We fled the dying currents. Your station, anchored on the threshold, offered the only refuge." Jasper's mind reeled. Rift dimensions, cataclysms, legends he'd dismissed as folklore now spoke through vertebrae and wing. Yet he forced himself back to the practical: life support, oxygen, power. "We'll need to discuss resources," he said, moving toward the fusion core control node. 10 creatures of your size will tax our systems. I need to reconfigure the oxygen loop and thermal regulators." NORAS calm voice chimed in. "Reallocation protocols available. Suggested modifications pending." Kailash dipped his head. In acknowledgement, "We do not intend to drain your reserves. Teach us to sustain ourselves here." Jasper tapped commands at the console, pulling up schematics of the environmental cycle. He explained the delicate balance: carbon dioxide scrubbers, thermal radiators, algae bioreactors. The dragons listened, swaying in time with his words. Every now and then, one would nuzzle a hydroponic tower, as if tasting the air. Between technical expositions, Jasper dared to ask, "Your language, sound waves through metal. How do you speak in this hull?" A third dragon, alive, silver-crested female, stepped close. She inhaled deeply, and the air itself around her seemed to hum. Jasper felt the hum as pressure waves in his chest. When she exhaled, he heard not noise but a tapestry of notes like wind chimes filtered through memory. Nora translated the patterns into text on his display. "You are the first human ever to understand our resonance. We are grateful." Jasper felt tears sting behind his visor. In 7 years, he'd never felt so seen. Over the next hours, the station transformed. Jasper led the dragons to the hydroponic bay, where he showed them how to tend the algae biotanks. Their wing membranes flicked out to catch drips of nutrient solution. Their claws gently pruned overgrown colonies. He reprogrammed the fusion core to divert waste heat through conduit risers, that the dragons could bask against or as Kailash demonstrated with a low rumble. Absorb and then radiate warmth back into the station. At the communications hub, Jasper and the dragons pored over the garbled static he'd been monitoring. Placing a console at Kailash's level, Jasper invited him to touch the frequency ray. When Kailash's claw met the control pad, the noise resolved into a crystalline pattern, the final plea of a dying Jari ship lost in the rift's currents. Jasper recognized the same pattern now pulsing in the dragon's resonances. "They were calling us," whispered Kailash, lost brethren, drifting beyond the veil. Jasper studied the data. The transmissions emanated from a point deep within Shackleton Crater. "I can send a probe," he offered. Nora could pilot it, but she needed a neural interface. The dragons murmured among themselves in harmonic halftones. Finally, Kailash placed his head against the console, and the station flickered as though waking from a dream. The interface glowed. He'd willingly shared a fraction of his bioplasmic energy to power it. Moments later, the first probe launched. Into the dark, it skittered across the lunar surface, eyes of infrared scanning for life signs. Jasper watched its feed alongside the dragon's, hope and fear braided in their luminous eyes. As Earth crept into view beyond the dome, a brilliant blue orb half swallowed by shadow, Jasper felt a new dawn break within himself. The silence that had been his only friend now felt hollow compared to the chorus of breaths, scales, and wing beats around him. In the vast solitude of space, he had found kinship in the unlikeliest of refugees. Kailash let out a low, joyful rumble. "Your heart is vast, human mechanic. Here we shall rest and rebuild." The words vibrated through the floor plates. Jasper placed his hand on the dragon's shimmering flank. "Then rest you shall," he promised. Outside, the probe's signal flared. Life signs detected. A group of Jari survivors, alive against all odds. Jasper's chest tightened with purpose. There would be time later to worry about oxygen budgets and solar panel throughput. For now, he and the dragons had each other and a mission that would change both their destinies forever. The station quivered as the probe's feed crackled to life, tiny flickers of movement. In the Shackleton Crater's shadow, Jasper and the Jari crowded around the slim viewports of the command console, hearts thundering in unison as the infrared tracers painted ghostly forms amidst the jagged boulders. But celebration was brief. The sensors began to dip, oxygen levels in Artemis 1 dropping unnervingly fast, fusion core output straining at maximum yield, and the thermal regulators screaming in protest as they shunted heat into the dragon's waiting flesh. Jasper swore under his breath, "We've got a resource crisis. At this rate, we'll freeze or suffocate before the end of the cycle." Kailash's voice resonated low and mournful. "Your kindness gives us life, but at your peril. We must balance." Behind him, for dragons stirred restlessly, coiling their wings like drawn bows. Their breathing, soft whistles, and staccato huffs filled the chamber with a living rhythm. Jasper laced his fingers on the console. He felt the weight of 10 colossal creatures pressing on the station's life support matrix, and yet he could not bear to turn them away. Every scale in that chamber shone with an intelligence older than humanity itself. Drawing in a breath, he began recalibrating the fusion core interface. "Okay," he muttered, fingers flying across the augmented terminal. "I'm going to reroute auxiliary power lines through the spare helium-3 reserves in the cold storage. We'll throttle the primary thrusters just enough to maintain orbital stability, but shed less thermal load, and I'll hook the dragon's plasma glands into the heat exchangers directly. It's experimental, but it should buy us time." At his side, the silver-crested female Lycée lowered her head, acknowledging. "Guide us," her tone implied. Jasper pointed to the aft bulkhead where a tangle of redundant coolant conduits ran the length of the habitat ring. "See these loops," he said. "If you channel your exhalations, your plasma mists into these conduits, the heat you generate will circulate through the radiators. It'll warm the station interior and reduce what I have to do on the reactors." Lycée stepped forward. She exhaled a plume of superheated ionized gas into the open grate of the coolant manifold. Metal hissed and steamed. NORAS diagnostics flickered green. Immediately, the temperature in the atrium rose by 5 degrees Celsius, a subtle but vital gain in this sealed environment. A chorus of relief rippled among the dragons. Kailash released a low, joyous rumble that vibrated the floor plates, Edison-like. Jasper grinned for the first time in days. "That's it," he cheered. "Keep it steady." By the time the makeshift heat exchange stabilized, the probe data had firmed up. 8 Jari survivors huddled near a fissure in the crater wall, bruised but alive. Their own energy reserves flickering, their resonances weak but distinct, called out for aid. The station's shuttle bay still housed the old survey lander, a single pilot craft converted for cargo runs. It wasn't designed for Dragon-scale payloads, but Jasper had already modified its frame with carbon titanium composite to bear heavier loads. He led a small team, himself, Lysi, and Torvaz, the emerald-flecked dragon who had first spoken of their home language. Together, they moved to the hangar's grated floor, where the lander rested under repair scaffolding. The shuttle's hatch swung open to reveal a cavernous hold, larger than any starship's crew module he'd seen. Lysi folded her wings to an elegant point, while Torvaz coated the composite struts with a thin layer of his bioplasmic secretion, hardening it into an organic reinforcement. Bioplasmic resin, Jasper marveled, stronger than aerospace-grade epoxy. He tapped the sensor. Compression tests at 95%. Perfect. Lysi nudged him forward. "We must hurry. The rift's bleed is closing." Jasper keyed the launch routine. "I've scheduled an optimal window 6 minutes from now when the station's orbital arc aligns with the crater's terminator. We'll slip in under radar of Earth's tracking arrays." Nora, "Plot a course with microgravity correction." "Course plotted," she confirmed. "Delta V requirements within capacity. Estimated round-trip duration, 3 hours. Time compressed into focus." Torvaz's wings snapped free. His tail wrapped around a harness Jasper had rigged to the shuttle's cargo spine. Lysi coiled her body into the hold, nostrils flaring. Once in acknowledgement, Kailash pressed a massive claw against Jasper's shoulder plate. "Return to us," he intoned. "Our kin await your salvation." Jasper nodded, swallowing hard. He clambered into the pilot's seat, heart pounding as he watched the dragons settle into the hold like living cargo. Outside the viewport, Earth's blue-green curve shimmered beyond the station's solar wings, a reminder of home, and of why he had survived all these lonely years. Engines roared. The lander detached from its umbilicals, drifting free into the silent void. Jasper guided it toward the crater's mouth, the immense shadows swallowing them as the shuttle hurtled downward. Inside the cargo hold, Torvaz exhaled a soft plasma glow to light their descent, while Lysi's presence radiated warmth through the hull plating. Jasper gritted his teeth as the craft's heat shield flared in lunar reentry. The station's gravity well pulled them in a steep arc. Sensors soared as he battled oscillations. Then, with a final pulse, the lander's retro thrusters flared. It settled atop the regolith with a cloud of dust that swirled around its hatches. Communication channels crackled. "Human ally here." A keening chorus echoed faintly. Jasper opened the external camera feed. In the dim light of the crater's rim, 8 ragged dragons emerged, their bodies worn but eyes shining with recognition. A tremor of triumph vibrated through the speaker. "They made it." Jasper whispered, voice thick. "They made it home." Torvaz's voice filled the cockpit. "And so shall the bond between flesh and metal endure," written across the stars. Outside, lunar dust settled like settling ashes. Inside, hope burned brighter than any fire. The void outside Artemis 1 shimmered with earthshine, the pale blue globe casting a gentle glow through the observation dome. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Jasper Kai stood at the central console, flanked by Kailash and the other Jari, as data streams scrolled across the holoscreens. The rescue date had joined the others, their bodies alight with renewed resonance, and the station had adapted to sustain all 18 dragons in relative comfort. Yet the rift's seal was nearing completion. Time was slipping away. Jasper drew a steadying breath. "Our window is closing. By my calculations, the dimensional fissure will be impassable in just under 4 hours. If we don't depart by then, we'll be stranded here, and you'll all perish when the rift contracts." Kailash inclined his head solemnly. "Then let us make haste." Across the atrium, Torvaz was already coordinating a final inventory of supplies: helium-3 cells, hydroponic nutrient packs, and the station's emergency fusion reserves. Lycée was teaching a small cohort of dragons to tend the bioreactors, instilling the rudiments of hydroponic stewardship so they could one day sustain their new home. Rare laughter bubbling, musical resonances rippled through the hall, a testament to spirits buoyed after near extinction. Jasper keyed a sequence on the main console. Schematics of Artemis I's fusion relay unfurled in 3-dimensional projection. "I've devised a slingshot maneuver," he explained, voice taut with excitement. "We'll fire the station's main plasma thrusters at maximum output, arc around the moon's dark side, and punch through the fissure edge at relativistic speed. I can't guarantee the hull integrity under that stress, but with your help, we can reinforce the plating from inside." Kalesh's cobalt eyes flickered. "We will lend you our strength, human. All that we are is yours to command." He placed a massive claw against the station's hull plating. The metal vibrated under his touch, resonating in harmony with his bioplasmic energy. One by one, each dragon joined him, their claws and talons pressed against the walls, their resonances weaving through the metal like living currents. Jasper activated the emergency reinforcement protocols. Robotic drones long dormant sprang to life, welding adaptive alloy strips around critical seams. But as the rift's pull intensified, they began to buckle under the strain. Kalesh leaned in, channeling his plasma warmth into the metal, softening and then hardening it with alchemical precision. The plating glowed crimson where dragon magma met metal, then cooled to an unbreakable lattice. Dragon's collective power welded the station into a near-mythical vessel, with the hull reinforced. Jasper sealed the final access hatches and manned the thruster controls. His fingers flew across the panel, overriding standard safety locks. Outside, the lunar horizon receded as Artemis I oriented itself skyward. The fusion core roared as streams of ionized plasma ignited through the exhaust ports, sending the station tumbling into the belt's shadows. On the bridge, Lycée and Torves monitored the dragons in the living atrium, ensuring each remained stable. An anxious silence reigned as the station creaked under the acceleration. Then the fissure's edge, a roiling aurora of fractal light, came into view ahead. A jagged tier between realities, flickering in shades of violet and gold. Jasper's voice cracked with urgency. "Brace for impact." The station shuddered as it pierced the boundary. For a heart-stopping moment, Artemis I and all its occupants seemed to dissolve into prismatic chaos, metal, flashlight, and hope unspooling in the kaleidoscopic void. Then, as quickly as it began, the turbulence ended. The vessel found new stability, and a panorama of an alien sky unfolded beyond the windows. Twin suns hung low above a sprawling lavender plain, crystalline spires shimmering in the distance. Silence fell. Dragons and human alike stared in awe at the uncharted world. Kalesh exhaled a long, weary rumble of relief. "We have come home." Jasper felt tears blur his vision. He approached the grandest of the twins, an ancient edifice of living crystal that pulsed with the heartbeat of this realm. "This place, it's beyond anything I imagined." Lycée coiled around his legs, her resonances soft and grateful. "You have given us a second chance. Here, we will thrive." Jasper surveyed the dragons, their scales catching the amber glow of the suns. "Then go," he said quietly. "Build your world anew. But know this, you will never be alone." One by one, they bowed their heads to him. Kalesh pressed a final blessing into the station's holoharmonic imprint that would endure as long as the crystals stood. Then, with wings unfurled like living sails, they ascended into the violet sky, trailing ribbons of bioplasmic light that danced across the horizon. Jasper remained at the viewport, heart alight with both triumph and longing. Artemis I floated, weightless, tethered only by memory and resonance. He tapped a sequence on the console, preparing for the long journey home to Earth, back to a world he'd left behind. But he carried with him the echoes of the Jari, their song woven into the station's very bones. As he powered up the engines, the twin suns set in unison, casting the lavender plains into shadow and igniting the crystal spires in a final blaze of light. Jasper Kai whispered into the hushed chamber, "May we meet again under starlight." And with that, Artemis I turned away from a new world, hurtling through the rift's silence toward Earth, a vessel of steel and hope, bearing the legacy of dragons and the promise of friendship that transcends worlds.